Good morning, everyone. This is Leah D'Souza from the Teach Project. I just want to check in with you all and see if you can hear me and you can see me. Wonderful. So welcome and thank you again for joining our Teach Educational Rounds. For today's session, we are going to be talking about motivational interviewing, the essential strategies in motivating clients to change. And our faculty presenting today is Rosa Dragonetti. Sorry.
Do you need the keyboard?
No, it's okay. You can just press that one.
Okay.
Okay. So just a reminder for all of you who are interested in obtaining a letter of completion for the Teach Educational Rounds, you have to have been registered for the webinar and completed the pre-learning assessment. Sign in to view the webinar as a participant, clearly indicating your first and your last name. And then finally, please complete the evaluation and post-learning assessment, which will be emailed to you on Wednesday, so tomorrow, okay? So our webinars are being live tweeted on Twitter, so please feel free to follow us at TSQuitSmoking, and be sure to use the hashtag TeachWebinar. All right, so many of you are already familiar with Rosa, and I'll just briefly introduce Rosa. I'm not going to read it all. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Rosa, Rosa is our project director of the Addictions Research and Education at CAMH, and she is our wonderful team leader at the Teach Project, so she has a big role to play today. Okay, so any potential sources of bias outlined on the following slides have been mitigated by making this information accessible and available to all of you at the time of registration and as we are currently doing right now. And Rosa has no disclosures, so we're all okay. So the Teach Project, the Teach curriculum, and the slides that we create for your learning experience have been developed and compiled with funding from the Government of Ontario, Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care specifically. And the content is based on evidence-based guidelines from the following sources you can see on the screen. So the materials and any of the verbal presentations that you see today, as well as in the discussion box, the chat box, are really only set out as general principles and approaches to assessment and treatment pertaining to tobacco cessation interventions. And we state that they do not constitute clinical or any other formal advice to a specific situation, and they should not replace the need for individualized clinical assessment and treatment plans by healthcare providers. Okay, so for today we have 3 learning objectives, and I'm going to hand it over to Rosa. After Rosa presents today, we have a bit of an interactive session where we actually have Melanie, who is going to be joining us today. And Melanie is coming to the Nicotine Dependence Clinic, and you will see an interaction between Rosa and Melanie. So Rosa is really briefly going to go over some theoretical information to help set the stage for motivational interviewing for those of you who are perhaps not too familiar or need a refresher of some of those numerous acronyms that the Teach Project delivers to you. So once that theoretical presentation is complete, we will jump right into having Melanie come in and sit down with Rosa. And then from there, we'll give you the opportunity to ask a few questions to have a debrief. Now, you'll notice on your screen as well, you do have your presentations as a PDF that you can download, but as well, you'll find an agenda mapping worksheet. So either download that, or if you already have it printed off, please feel free to use that agenda mapping worksheet, and Rose is going to talk to you about how you will utilize it. And when the interaction happens with Melanie, you'll be able to see, perhaps follow along on your end as well. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Rosa as well.
Thanks, Leah, and welcome, everyone. So as Leah mentioned, I'm just going to do a really quick review of some of the MI principles. Many of you will have already taken the Teach core course where you learned about some of these principles, or you may have taken it at training. Just so that we all come on the same page, we're just going to go through them really quickly. So as you know, the spirit of MI is pretty much the one of the most important parts of motivational interviewing. Without the spirit, they really are just techniques that may or may not work for you. So quickly, MI spirit consists of having compassion. So really trying to understand why our clients make decisions that they make. They make them for good reasons, and we have to try our best to understand what it is, what brings them to choosing some of these behaviors. Acceptance is also another key component, and acceptance is not the same thing as agreeing with their behaviors or their decisions. But again, it's coming to that understanding that people make decisions as best they can with the resources that are available to them. And so we accept that they make those decisions, but we don't accept that this has to be where they continue to go, that we can still help them make different kinds of choices. And how do we do that? We do it through a collaborative partnership. So it's not us as clinicians telling them this is how you should change your behavior, but I have some expertise and the client has some expertise, and together we're going to figure out what the best strategy is and what the best goals are for the client. We want to also spend some time on evocation, and what that means is the client again comes with lots of strengths. Many times when we're doing our assessments, we're looking to see what's not going so well in the client's life, but the reality is that they come with a lot of strengths, and we want to evoke those strengths. So what is it that they already know in terms of changing their behavior? How have they gone about it before? What resources have they accessed? What are some of those strengths, and evoking that from the client to build on those strengths so we're not starting from scratch. Then, of course, once we've established the relationship with the client, we walk through the 4 processes. So the first process is to engage with the client. And you'll know that no matter what strategy you use, whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy, behavioral interventions, any kind of intervention, without the therapeutic alliance, it really is very difficult to engage the client. So that's where you're going to start, and how do you build that relationship? So you're going to see in the demonstration today my attempts at building that relationship and connecting with the client, so that we can then move on to the next stages. Many times, or I'd say most times, our clients come to us and they don't have one issue. They have many issues. So clients aren't just smoking. They may also be drinking. They may not be eating healthy, very low physical activity. But where do you start? Because that could be very overwhelming for somebody to have to change all those behaviors or address them. So how do we help the client focus on a specific goal, paying attention to other factors as well, but really establishing what we like to call SMART goals? Again, we use evoking from the client why they want to change and how they might go about doing that. And then we move them to the final stage, which is actually planning the concrete steps. So maybe it's developing a quit plan. What are the components of that quit plan? Now, these don't necessarily go in a linear direction. Clients can jump back and forth. You may have established a good relationship. You move on to focusing. You really make the client angry by something you've said, and you have to start by re-engaging the client once again. So think of this as very dynamic, and it's not a linear process. Okay. Now, the 4 strategies, the key ones, which really make up the tools that you use for motivational interviewing are OARS. Leah mentioned there's lots of acronyms. So OARS stands for the open-ended questions. Using open-ended questions often so that you can elicit more information from the client and trying to elicit change talk. Providing affirmations, so recognizing the strengths that the client brings to the partnership, and pointing out things that they're doing really well. Because oftentimes clients will feel, I haven't been able to change, I'm not doing this very well, and will minimize some of the efforts that they've made. So we need to recognize some of those strengths. Reflections, to me, reflections are one of the hardest parts of motivational interviewing or counseling in general. So reflecting back is, showing the client what they've just said to you, and it's easy just to repeat back, and those are simple reflections. The hard part comes when we want to go into deeper reflections or more complex ones where we take a guess at how the client is feeling, what's the emotion behind what they're saying, and what are some implications of that. So I'm going to try and do some complex reflections today, see if you can catch them, or see where I offer some simple reflections where you think, actually, she could have said this. So paying close attention to some of the reflective statements. Summarizing really helps us to catch some of our thoughts in terms of, the client might be saying lots of things, and you want to just take a little break and make sure that you're understanding everything that the client is telling you. So I see that there are some questions already. So, what are some of the open-ended questions you can use? Well, I'm going to ask you that when we debrief. So pay attention to some of the questions that I use. I'm going to use both closed and open-ended questions because the idea is not to use only open-ended. You can use closed-ended, but you should use more open. But again, pay attention to see, could I have turned some of my closed questions into open-ended questions? So I spoke a little bit about clarifying goals. So, there's different scenarios. So sometimes clients come in with a very clear direction. I want to quit smoking. I'm here to do that. Please help me. If that's the case, you don't need to spend any time focusing because the client clearly has some well-stated goals. Sometimes clients come in, and this is the usual when you're not practicing in a cessation clinic, for example, but maybe in a general clinic where clients will say, yeah, I know I should really quit, but I'm not really sure how to go about it. I also want to lose weight. I might want to look at my drinking. And so that's when the client has some unclear directions or they have multiple choices to make. And so this is where the agenda mapping tool can really come in useful. So agenda mapping, you can use the worksheet. And this is especially really effective when a client is very unfocused and the client just sort of throws all these different behaviors at you and they're not really sure where to start. And this could be a really helpful way to map it out for them so that they can then take a look and say, okay, these are all the areas I'm struggling with, and then where do we start? Agenda mapping can also be done with the use of one question. For example, you can say, given everything that's going on in your life right now, where would you like to start? What would you like to focus on? So it doesn't have to be using the tool. It could be a very simple question. Evoking, again, it's what are the client's reasons for changing and strengthening their motivation to do we do that? So what do we want to evoke? We want to evoke change talk versus sustained talk. So change talk, here's an example. I should practice this motivational interviewing stuff. And sustained talk would be the opposite, but I'm booked back to back with clients, so I don't really have time to do this. So you can see with the change talk, the person is giving you a reason, right, that they want to change. Whereas with sustained talk, they're making excuses like, yeah, I should do that, but I have other things that are higher priority. So you'll hear that ambivalence coming out through sustained talk. One way to remember change talk or to recognize it is through the darn CAT acronym. So you'll hear clients making statements that show a desire to change. I'd really love to quit smoking. Sometimes you'll hear them say things that relate back to their ability to make a change. Yeah, I managed to quit smoking for a week. I can do this. Reasons, I really need to quit because I was just diagnosed with emphysema. Or the need, my grandchildren really are pushing me to quit smoking, therefore I need to make this change. The darn are what we call the preparatory change talk. So clients are getting ready to make a commitment to change, but they're not quite there. Our goal is to elicit some of that change talk and then move them to making more of a solid commitment. So that's where the CAT comes in. So what's the commitment language? I'm going to schedule an appointment with my doctor so that I can talk about how to quit smoking. I went out and I bought the patches because I'm going to put them on tomorrow and start my quit. That's activation. Or taking steps. So I've quit for a week and I'm doing well and I'm on my way to doing this. So these are the types of things that we want to pay attention to, and we want to help evoke these types of statements from our clients. So how can you elicit change talk? Well, basically it's putting everything that I've just said all together. So assessing readiness, which I'll show you how to do that. Hopefully that's a review. Focusing on what the rewards are of making that change. But what are some of the risks? So thinking about where your triggers might be and what are the risks to quitting smoking and how that's going to impact the actual quit plan. What are the roadblocks? Again, looking at some of the obstacles that people might encounter. And you'll remember, or hopefully you'll remember, the resisting the writing reflex. So the writing reflex, in case you don't remember, is that inclination that clinicians often have to fix things right away. When a client comes in and they say, well, I'm really struggling because I have severe withdrawal, my first response might be, well, actually, if you use nicotine replacement therapy, that will really help with withdrawal. I have the answer and I want to give it to the client. And that's not the most effective way because, again, if a client is ambivalent, they're not quite ready to hear how I'm going to fix it. I just need to first talk about how I'm struggling with withdrawal, what it means to have it. Can you understand as a clinician what I'm going through? So we have to resist providing all the answers to the client because, we want to evoke from them what those answers might be. And we use the ORS skills to do all of this. So I know I've gone through this really quickly, but you're going to see some of this because this is a review. You're going to actually see us now practice it. The final strategy I want to talk about is the elicit, provide, elicit. So this is a really simple one. You probably use it already in your practice. So elicit from the client what they understand about the problem. So again, resist that writing reflex and ask the client, what do you know about this? Tell me how you understand this issue. And then you can provide additional information to fill in the gaps with permission. And then once you provide that information, find out how the client heard that. What did they understand from that? How did they experience that information? And what are the next steps for that? So that's EPE, very simple, and I'm hoping to demonstrate that as well. So just to summarize the top 6 strategies to motivate change, we want to listen for change talk. We want to evoke change talk from our clients by using reflections and trying to use complex reflections. Set an agenda so if the client comes in with multiple issues and then feeling overwhelmed, help them to focus so that they can focus on one area at a time or on several areas, depending on what they're ready to do. Remember to ask for permission before providing any information. So if you use elicit, provide elicit, that's a good way to provide some of the information that you may have. And then emphasizing personal control. So going back to the spirit of motivational interviewing and remembering that in the end, the client has to make the decision in terms of what their goal is, if they're ready to change, and how they're going to go about that. We really are here to help facilitate that change, but ultimately it's their decision. It's their personal choice. Okay, so the other thing to keep in mind is that change is a process and it's unique to every client. So you may spend a whole hour trying to motivate the client, you feel like you're getting somewhere, and then at the end the client says, I'm still not quite ready. It's hard not to feel defeated because you want what's best for your client, and by quitting smoking or making certain changes that's the best thing for them, but it is a process. And what you say to them in that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour may not get them to change right now, but it may sit with them and they can digest some of that information and come back when they are kind of ready. Okay, so we're not going to take questions right now, but we are going to go right into our role play. So Melanie's going to come in and sit down in my office. So pay attention to some of the skills that I'm using. Remember, I want to establish the spirit. I want to set that agenda, and I want to use some of the complex reflections. So see what skills I am using. It's not going to be a perfect interview because there is no such thing as a perfect interview. I will make mistakes. I will say things that you might disagree with. Make notes of those, and then we can debrief and see how things could have gone differently. And of course, hopefully you'll see some things that go well. Okay, so Melanie, thanks for coming in today. Tell me a little bit about what brought you here.
I don't know, really. I mean, I guess it's just, I've just gotten to the point where I just feel like I should quit smoking. I should quit smoking.
All right. So you should quit smoking. Is that the same thing as you want to quit smoking, or has somebody asked you to come here?
No, nobody's asked me. Like, I just personally, I don't know what to do. I mean, I tried once before, like, I tried basically to go cold turkey, I guess, for like a week. Like, I didn't buy a pack for a week, right? But I ended up bumming cigarettes off people at work, so it's not like I didn't do it. Like, I couldn't do it. So I don't know. I don't even yeah, so I guess I'm just hoping somebody can help me.
Okay. So you're here because you have tried to quit smoking in the past. It's not gone as you would have liked it to have gone. But it is something that you have been thinking about.
Well, and it also sort of told me how hard it is, right? Like, I mean, honestly, like, I thought, okay, just don't buy a pack, right? Just don't do it. But, yeah, that didn't go so well.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just ask a question, because I can see, well, you're here, so you are thinking about quitting smoking, but
Yeah.
I'm sensing that maybe the confidence is not so high. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the most important thing you have to do, where does quitting smoking fit in? How important is it?
Oh, God. I never really thought of it like that, honestly. Like, I mean, I've got reasons that I want to, but I kind of don't want to. I don't know, 5, 6,
Okay.
6, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's important for you to quit, but there are other things that might be a little bit more important in your life right now.
Or just not knowing how, or even thinking that I would know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me ask you a little bit of a different question, similar to that. So now on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the most confidence you have in quitting, how confident are you that you could do this?
Okay, so like that's pretty low.
Okay.
Like
What would you rate it?
right now,
Right now, this minute.
2.
Okay.
2.
2. Okay.
Probably.
Okay. So you think it is important for you to quit smoking, not so confident, and so maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. So quitting can be difficult. A lot of people can struggle. You've tried, and it seems to be difficult for you.
Yeah.
What would it take to make you even a little bit more confident? So going from a 2 to maybe even a 3, what would have to happen?
Well, honestly, like I said, I don't even know where, like, what I can do. I don't know. You go into the drugstore for any reason. You go to the pharmacist, and there's this rack in front of the pharmacist, right? And it's like rack upon rack upon rack, and it's all this stuff, and you look at it, and you're like, yeah, but they're all there's different brands, there's different names, there's different things, there's different, and I don't know, right? Like, I don't know what I can do. So I know that if I try doing it like I did it last time, that's probably not going to work.
Okay.
Because I'm going to bum smoke off. So, but then I look at this stuff and I'm like, well, does this stuff really even work? Like, and if it does, then like, how do you get it, or how does it?
Okay. So your confidence would increase if you knew what are the best ways to quit smoking? What are some of the things out there that could actually help you with quitting?
Yeah, I guess, or just even the things that I try, like the one thing I know I did try didn't work.
Okay. You said it didn't work, but you mentioned that you didn't buy cigarettes for a week. You bummed a few cigarettes off of some people.
Yeah.
So can I assume that you did smoke less during that week?
Oh yeah, I totally smoked less,
Yeah.
but I still smoke. Yeah.
That's not what you wanted to do.
Yeah, but like I thought, I just thought, okay, just, quit for the week.
Yeah, of course.
And that shouldn't be too hard, and then maybe after a week you'll be all right. But it's like, I mean, most of us at work, not everybody, but most of us at work, like, you don't get a break unless you take a smoke break, right? So they're all getting a break because they're taking a smoke break. I want a break too. I want to smoke too. So that was like doubly hard. Yeah. Right? So then it's like, just give me a smoke. And then take a break, have a smoke, and yeah, so maybe I missed a couple breaks. But yeah.
Okay. So you did try, and you did have some success, although you didn't reach your goal.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, part of that is because you got some challenges. So you're working with people who smoke.
Yeah, my husband.
And your husband, so at work people are smoking, and at home your husband smokes?
Yeah.
Do you live with anyone else?
I know, right now it's just the two of us there. Our kids are going.
Okay. And so tell me a little bit more about your husband and his smoking and how that relates to you.
Well, I mean, it's like, I don't honestly think that I could do it alone. And yes, we may have talked about it because basically it's our grandkids really, but we've talked about it, but neither of us know how to go about it. And I don't think, like, sometimes I feel like if I start, maybe he'll do it. But at the same time, I feel like if I start and he's still smoking, there's no way.
That's just too hard.
I'm just gonna want to have a cigarette. Like, how can I not? If he's having one, and I'm like, okay, I'm not. Like, I just, I don't know how to do any of that. So part of me feels like if both of us do it, then maybe. But I don't know. Maybe I should try first, and then maybe he can follow. Or
yeah. So you feel like if you had support in quitting smoking, for example, your husband quitting with you, that would make it easier. And certainly, when you live with somebody who's smoking and you're trying to quit, it does make it harder. So I can understand exactly why you would want him to quit with you.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the reasons for us would be the same. So
tell me a little bit more about those reasons.
I mean, mostly it's the grandkids. Like, I mean, my children don't really want to bring the kids over because man smells bad, or, you know, like, so and because we smoke in the house. So, yeah, they don't really want to bring the kids around, and I want the kids around.
Yeah, your grandkids are important to you.
That's the love of my life now. So it's like, if they don't want a hug from their grandmother, like, it hurts.
That doesn't feel good at all.
No, it doesn't. It feels really bad. So.
Yeah. So you'd like to be able to stop smoking so that you can focus on your grandkids and be a good role model and
have them come over and not. Because it's kind of embarrassing too, I guess.
I can see how important it is to you. I mean, I can, you're looking down, and I could see that this is important.
I mean, yeah, and I don't know if and my cousin and one of my uncles, and they said basically that they'd probably still be alive if they didn't smoke. So, and I'm 50, and my husband's 52, and it just starts to all sort of add up. Like, I mean, at this point, everybody knows it's not good for you, right? Like, you'd have to be blind and deaf and, like, just to not know it's not good for you.
Yeah. So you know that it's harmful to continue smoking, and you are concerned about your health, given your age, your smoking.
I want to be around for my kids.
Exactly. So, again, your kids are really important to you. Your grandkids are really important to you. Your health is important to you.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
That seems to be the end of it, but yeah. But yeah.
Okay. But quitting smoking, you found it a bit challenging. What is it that you like about smoking?
I don't know. There's lots of things that I actually love about smoking, to tell you the truth. Like, I love having it in my fingers. I've been smoking since I was 13, right? Like, it's just, I don't know. I don't know if I love it or if I'm just so used to it. It's just, I love having that cigarette in my hand when I'm having a glass of wine. Like, I love that it relaxes me at the end of the day. I love that it gives me a reason to have a break at work, because they won't give us one otherwise, right? Like, I love the fact that I can, like, I can feel it, like, and I know other people say it tastes horrible. It doesn't taste horrible to me. I kind of like it. I mean, yeah, sometimes I get that it doesn't smell great, but often I don't get that. And often it smells pretty fantastic. So.
You enjoy the smoking, and it looks like you enjoy the ritual too, the holding it in your hand.
Totally. Like,
I noticed you did inhaling and
it's just like, yeah, just like this, like, I've had my fingers like this for a long time. Like, it's just...
Yeah. Well, you said you started at 13. You're 50. That's a long time to be smoking. You practiced this quite a bit.
I know.
Yeah.
This, you know, it's like...
And you enjoy it. It's become part of you.
Part of my day. It's part of... I think I identify as a smoker, you know? Like, I'm a smoker.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, smokers are bad people.
Yeah, that's certainly the message that comes across, right?
People that, like, I mean, they give you a look, they do, or the people that cough when they're walking by you or something, or they'll say something when you're walking down the street, and of course now everywhere it's like you can't smoke, what is it, 9 meters or something, like even, like we used to be able to smoke on the patio, you used to be able to smoke in the bar. We keep getting pushed away, like...
Doesn't feel so good to be...
We're the bad people now. Right? Like, and I don't think I'm a bad person, I think I'm a good person, but I'm starting to feel like, no, you're a bad person. And, yeah, that doesn't feel great, and I don't want to be a bad person for my grandkids, for sure.
Okay. So while you really enjoy the smoking, you enjoy the behaviors that go with the smoking, some of your experience is not so good because you feel judged by lots of people.
For sure.
You don't feel like you're a positive role model for your grandkids. It doesn't feel right. Although it's part of your identity, it doesn't feel like it's who you want to be.
I don't know how to get to that being who I want to be. Like, or that I can even imagine myself there. That's what I don't know how to do. Like, I don't know how to get from me to that version of me that doesn't have to go through that. I have no idea how to do that.
So again, I'm hearing you talk about if you knew how to do that, if you had some solid strategies that might increase your confidence, you might be able to get to a place where you're more comfortable with.
Be nice.
Okay, that's fair. You mentioned before, if I want to just go back to something that you said, that you drink. I want to understand a little bit more about how you smoke and where you smoke. So you mentioned that, sometimes you're having a glass of wine when you smoke. Can you tell me a little bit more about how those two go together for you, the alcohol and the smoking?
Well, like I said, it used to be when I was a kid growing up, you'd have a cigarette, you'd have your glass of wine. I guess for me it was beer when I was a kid, but now I just do, I only drink wine. But yeah, you'd go with your friends, you'd go to the nightclub, you'd have a cigarette, you'd have a beer in your hand, you'd dance away, you'd have a great time. Okay, so now you can't do that. And then it was like maybe being on the patio and having a glass of wine and figuring now you can't even do that. So basically, it's at home, and well, we always have wine. My husband drinks beer, but I always have a glass of wine with dinner, always. So, you know, and then you finish dinner and you light your cigarette and you finish your glass of wine, and yeah, for sure they just sort of they
go hand in hand.
It's all sort of, you know,
yeah,
it's all kind of part of the same ritual, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you called it.
Yeah, lots of times I hear clients talking about having a glass of wine in one hand,
cigarette in the other. It tastes delicious.
Yeah,
I don't care what anyone says, but at that moment,
it feels good.
It feels great.
Yeah.
It feels great. It does. Even though I know whatever, I shouldn't be. Maybe it shouldn't feel great, but at that point it kind of does.
Okay. So you're drinking every day with dinner and a little bit after dinner as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So how much would you say you're drinking per week then? Is it about 7 glasses? Is it 14? What do you think?
Seriously, I've never thought of that. I mean, always with dinner. It's always wrong with dinner, sometimes after dinner. I mean, and, you know, if we have friends over on the weekend or something, or a barbecue, there might be a couple more. Like, honestly, I've never added.
Okay. What do you know about low-risk drinking?
Sorry?
Have you ever heard of the low-risk drinking guidelines?
No.
Okay. Can I tell you a little bit about them?
You can. Sure, I guess.
Okay. It doesn't sound like you really want. Can you just? You're looking very confused. I'm not sure.
I didn't think I'd be here to talk about drinking.
I'm a little bit concerned about your drinking because you said that you're having, 1 glass, 2 glasses. So I'm just a bit concerned because, that's above the low-risk drinking guidelines.
Okay. I don't know. I thought that was pretty normal.
No, not really. And, drinking and smoking, like you said, go hand in hand. And so I'm worried that it's going to be a trigger for you as well. I'm wondering if we can talk more about the alcohol.
Honestly, I've never really considered myself having a problem. So, like, I don't consider myself an alcoholic or anything like that.
Oh,
like,
I'm not saying you're an alcoholic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Really, I feel like I'm here because I want to quit smoking. I guess I'm hearing you that maybe the ritual together is an issue. But really, right now, I just want to be able to go home tonight and say, George, listen, if we're going to do this, or if I'm going to do this, I'd prefer if it was like, if we're going to do this, okay, so I found out we could do this, I found out we could do this, I found out we could do this. Like, I'm not going to go home and say, hey, George, guess what? We're alcoholics. Like, not going to do that.
Okay. I hear you. And would it be okay? So today we're going to focus on your smoking. We'll talk about what your options are, what you might want to do about that.
Okay.
Would it be okay to talk about alcohol maybe a few weeks from now, just to touch base a little bit about it? Because it does go with the smoking, and I'm just worried that it's going to interfere if you do quit smoking.
Okay, so, like, what is this low guideline? Like what is that?
Yeah, so they suggest a minimum amount that you should be smoking, or sorry, maximum amount that you should be smoking per week before you start to get into some problem areas.
Smoking or drinking?
Sorry, drinking.
So there's a max before you get into a problem?
A problem area where you're drinking a little bit more than you should be.
Okay, and what is that?
So for women, it's about 9 to 10 glasses per week, and for men, it's a little bit higher. And you're kind of around.
So I'm pretty around that. Like, I mean, if I just have a glass of wine with dinner every day, that's 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe we can come back to it another time, but let's go back to focusing on the tobacco, because I think that you're telling me that's where you want it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I just really want to get a better understanding of where smoking fits for you and how it's all related to some of this other stuff.
Okay.
But I hear you. Let's focus on the smoking right now. Okay. So let's just recap what we've been talking about so far. Okay. So you came here today because you have been thinking about quitting.
Yeah.
And actually you've been thinking quite a bit about quitting because you took a try by quitting cold turkey.
Yeah.
It didn't go as well as you had wanted, but you did take some steps, and you did stop and not buy cigarettes and
I bombed, but I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So you did take some steps.
Yeah.
You have pretty important reasons for you to quit. Your grandkids are really important to you. You want to be a good grandma. You want to be a role model for them. You want them to visit and be able to do that freely without. It's also not so fun being judged by society because smokers are often looked down upon.
Yeah.
And so you want to be a different person. You're just not sure how to get to that place.
Yeah.
Does that summarize what we've been talking about?
Or if I even can. But I don't. Because it seems like just such a. It seems like it would be a very different person than who I am right now.
Okay. Would it be okay? You had mentioned going into a pharmacy and seeing all these products, but not really. Yeah. But you don't really understand what they are, how they work. Could we spend a little bit of time talking about some of those products, but also other things that might help you in terms of quitting?
Sure, because I find it completely confusing.
Okay. So tell me what you already know about those medications that you see in the pharmacy. Do you know anything about them?
Okay, so like there's a bunch of different ones. I know, I've seen gum, and you always hear about the patch. You've been hearing about the patch for years, right? But there's like different kinds. There's these little things that look like they're fake cigarettes.
Right, inhaler.
But, okay, whatever. I don't know. I just. And then there's different brands, and there's different. So they have different colors. There's different. Whatever. There's guns. So this other weird thing, I don't even know what it was, like an inhaler. I don't know. Well, you said an inhaler, but it was like, I don't know. Yeah. There's just a bunch of stuff.
There's a lot. It can be very overwhelming. Yeah. So all of those products are called nicotine replacement products.
Okay.
And the way they work is that they provide the body with nicotine only.
Okay.
So so that you can stay out of withdrawal, manage craving. Nicotine is actually not the harmful substance in cigarettes. It's all the other stuff that they put in, the smoke, carbon monoxide, and all the other chemicals. So nicotine replacement actually helps to get rid of those and just deliver nicotine to you. And they come in different products. So the patch you mentioned, you put the patch on in the morning. It keeps you out of withdrawal for about 24 hours, and then you replace it the next morning. There's the gum, the inhaler, as you mentioned. The inhaler can be good for people who want to do this hand-to-mouth thing.
Okay.
And there's also the lozenge, the mist.
Mist, it was like a mist or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so those other ones, the patch kind of works for a 24-hour period. The other ones are what we call shorter term, so they give you a little bit of a boost. So if you're in a place where you're feeling a really strong craving.
Like right now, like me wanting to
right
go.
now, because we're talking about it so
the whole time, and now I'm just like, can I just get out of here and have a cigarette, please?
Yeah. So you're experiencing some cravings right now.
Yeah.
And that's when, gum or lozenge could help. So those are what we call nicotine replacement products. We can talk more about those if you're interested, because, there's a cost associated with those products, and there's different brands, as you said, so how might you choose which product is best for you? So we can talk more about that. On top of medications, though, we also would strongly recommend getting additional support. So support can mean very different things for people. So it could be calling a helpline, going to a group and where there are other people who are trying to quit smoking, could be talking to your doctor, your pharmacist. There's online websites where you can get some additional support.
Not particularly tech savvy, I have to say, but the group thing you're talking about, like sort of like an AA kind of, like where people get together, kind of.
It's not quite like AA, although that's one option. It's more about where you've got a clinician who's facilitating, and you develop some skills and tools on how to deal with it.
So it's like kind of more school-like then.
Kind of. It's a mix of school and AA. It's people. You're learning different skills, not just from the facilitator, but also from the other clients as well. Okay. So we talked a little bit about your reasons for quitting, how you might go about quitting. What do you feel like you want to do now? Can we? I hear that, and I know talking about smoking can really increase those cravings. Could we schedule an appointment to talk about how you might quit?
Could I bring my husband?
Absolutely. It sounds like if your husband would quit, that would increase your confidence as well, because again, it's hard to.
Yeah, I don't like. Okay, so he has one first thing in the morning for sure. I usually have one after I make coffee.
Okay.
So while I'm making coffee, he's having
a smoke. Okay. Yeah. So absolutely, if you want to bring him in, it's a conversation that we can have with him.
That might help.
Okay. So you're good to come back and we can continue the conversation?
Should I try something?
What do you feel you can do between now and the next time?
Like, should I try, like, I don't know, should I buy, like, a gum or something, or should I try something, or should I just wait until we get, like,
You can give it a try. There's no harm in trying because you'll learn something. You'll learn that you need more than just the medication, or that might be enough. So you can talk to the pharmacist, and they can help you choose what best medication to...
do I have to go to my doctor first? Or?
No. For NRT, you can go to the pharmacy and talk to the pharmacist because they can tell you a little bit more about the products. And then see how it goes, and then next week when you come in, or whenever you want to come back, we can talk a little bit how that went. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
Okay.
See if I can get George in here.
Okay. So that's great. So you're going to go talk to the pharmacist, maybe try the medication,
Okay.
talk to George to see if he will come in as well,
Okay.
and then we can go from there.
Okay.
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 There, we haven't made any commitments. You're just trying. And next week we can start from scratch.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Melanie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.